first time that these tools have worked outside of our buildings. So bear with us if there's any technical gremlins that squeeze in here and there, but we're really excited about getting to show everybody kind of how we build Warcraft. And with me on stage are some of the most talented members of our level design crew that we have. I'm incredibly honored to introduce to you the team. We'll start here with Ely.
Hello, I'm Ely Cannon. I'm a level designer on World of Warcraft. I have been working on that team for about 10 years now. Started at Burning Crusade, and I just absolutely love it. I mean, this is the best job. We get to build this giant world that you all love to explore.
So much butt.
Experiences in every single day. It's good.
You can't help
Hi, my name is Gary Platner, and I've been working at Blizzard for 17 years now. The majority of that time I was lead environment artist.
I know him from, I'm sorry.
Oh,
it wasn't just weird.
Just recently.
it was weird.
It's fine, actually. It wasn't.
On the
If you
design team
didn't
before.
know him,
I'm not a
A lot of
complete
people
stranger.
ask how do you
if
get
you
a
were a
job
complete stranger, it would have also not been weird. Just so you know.
Good.
Let's speak
Maybe be a lead environment artist for 15 years and maybe they'll give you a shot. I don't know. They do with me. So we do give a lot of tours at work. A lot of VIPs and a lot of celebrities actually. And the highlight of every tour has always been what we're going to show you today. And this is the first time this piece of software has left the Blizzard building. So we are super excited.
I think it's
guys showed up
blinding
and
in.
we're going to show you this.
I started working at Blizzard Entertainment back in 1999. I had the privilege of being able to work on Westfall and Elwyn, and more recently working on zones like Spires of Iraq and High Mountain. It's been an amazing experience seeing how this, our tools and our processes and our level of fidelity have evolved. And it's going to be a lot of fun showing you guys and girls how we do it.
Cool. I'm the design manager for the World of Warcraft team. And before we start, I have a question for all of you out there. Who do you think is the most important character in World of Warcraft? Any ideas? Thrawn! Hey! Illidan! Hey! You know, we got all these characters. But actually, probably the most important character in World of Warcraft is Azeroth. It's the world. The world is this living, breathing thing. And these guys are the guys that get to bring it to life. So what we're going to do today is we're going to run through some areas, two very different areas that Matt and Ely are working on. And we're going to talk through a little of our process, how we look at those things. So for the start, Matt's kind of going to be building some kind of an island, aren't you, Matt? So tell us some more.
Okay, well, first off, I'm going to be building a little island that harkens back to Warcraft 2. You know, when you drop a lumber mill down in the forest, you have a little lumber mill there. So I wanted to build an island that had a human alliance lumber mill settlement, and that's kind of where I'm starting from today.
Cool, awesome. Let's get going. Show us some tools.
All right. So this is how every zone starts out. This is how every continent has started out. It's a flat plane of geometry. This plane is what every monster and player run on. And Eastern Kingdoms and Kalimdor are one giant plane that has been sculpted and textured and populated as one single thing. So I'm going to start off with...
That's super interesting.
Yeah.
Why don't you show us some of that tool action?
Well, all right. So here's the terrain tool, and basically this terrain tool allows us to literally sculpt in 3D with different types of brushes. We have like much more subtle geometry. We can use different types of plateau tools. You know,
it's really just a 3D sculpting tool, right?
Exactly. It's just like, and it's a lot of fun. It's like playing with Play-Doh.
And we developed all of this in-house, by the way. This is proprietary.
Yes, it is. And this is basically how you go from the peaks of Iron Forge to the very depths of the Vishir. This is what we did. Literally, as a team, we push it all the way down or pull it all the way up and sculpt it out.
Awesome. All right, so we can tell you've got a lot of control over this. So what's the next sort of thing you can do?
Well, the next thing we do is we'd be picking some textures that are provided to us by the environment team. And I'll just kind of quickly fill the blanks in here with some sand, just to kind of show you how we start off. And with these textures, we're able to kind of
It's a painting
paint
tool,
on,
really, like a 3D.
paint on these textures that by themselves have kind of a little bit of personality, but mixed together, they end up creating kind of a really interesting mosaic. And so
It's really like a 3D Photoshop almost, really.
Yeah.
It takes an artistic touch to do this.
oh, absolutely. You know, to do this job, you have to have relatively good design instincts and good art instincts, as well as kind of a decent level of understanding for just performance and things like that. So.
Okay, so we've seen the sculpting tools and the texturing tools. So how is a zone started? What would you do when you just start a zone?
Well, I usually start off with like a demo zone of some sort, but I also use some doodads, what we call doodads, which is
Doodads, what do you mean? Well, like props, right?
yeah,
That's what
like
you call props.
static meshes, props, or whatever.
I don't know why we call them doodads.
So I kind of get like an idea of what I want to make as I'm thinking about this island, and I'm kind of picking out different trees that might go well with the terrain textures that I popped out, and.
So you're really talking about like color theory is happening here. You're trying to
Absolutely.
match and get a good sense of a mood, really.
Yeah, and I'll basically bash all that stuff together, kind of get a library of what I want to work with. And this is just the beginning of the library that I want to work with, but I kind of have my palette here.
So you're putting these all together, see what you have, hit an inventory, and see how they look together, and you're just seeing if everything works, right?
Exactly. So,
All right, what happens next?
so what we did here is basically created a block out with the basic idea of how I want my island to look. So I kind of placed my human building here, and some stables for his livestock, and then I placed a lumber mill, and then I added cut some trails into what is going to be some kind of an enemy.
Oh, real quick, I've noticed some of the textures interacting with each other in a weird. How does that work?
So this is like basically an alpha layer map, and so because the fidelity is so precise and those cracks and stuff like in there, the environment artists create these height maps within the texture that allows us to use pressure sensitivity in our tools.
Matt's working on a tablet, by the way.
Yeah.
Some people use a Cintiq, other people use just a regular tablet. So it's pressure sensitive.
Yeah.
So it is like Photoshop, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I was working before they came out with tablets, so I have these really old habits. But that's kind
Like
of
with
how
a mouse? What do you mean?
no left clicking on a mouse anymore, thankfully. So basically with these terrain textures, for example, the rocks especially, the rocks and the cliffs that we make is really the best way that we can express ourselves in what we do. Because it's the vertical element that players look at a lot. And these rock textures here kind of inform me that these will be more jagged shapes. And so I try to get those sharky shapes out of here. I'll generally start off with something blobby like this just to get some very simple composition. But then I'll start kind of prototyping some toothy shapes and stuff like that.
So the textures sort of match the geometry that you're sort of creating. You're pulling from little cracks and other things.
Absolutely.
Make it match.
Absolutely. And then I'll use a simpler texture to kind of define the top edge of this. And it kind of helps carve out these different shapes.
Cool.
And then on top of that, there's vertex mapping, which allows us to kind of add different values of shade or highlights to the zone.
That vertex shading is amazing. I remember when we got that years ago. It's a game changer.
Absolutely.
We couldn't do this in vanilla WoW.
We couldn't do a lot of this in vanilla WoW, actually. A lot of the zones, like Westfall, was made largely with left clicking at first.
Westfall is definitely Matt's favorite zone. So you got about, what do you got, about 4 textures down? How many, if you would guess, how many textures do you think an entire zone would have?
For me? My guess would be, I guess about 13 textures would be about the most that I would use.
How many? 13?
Yeah, that'd be about it.
So it's not like thousands of textures. Why do you keep it limited to such a small number?
Well, my philosophy is, there's technical limitations as to, like, each one of these little squares that you see here only allows up to 4 different textures. So we have to be very strategic as to where we place our rocks, where we place our additional textures that we might want to use. But beyond that, my philosophy is, and I've learned this through working on this tool, is that limitation breeds innovation. And when I find myself kind of painted in a corner and having to find, especially when you go to areas between zones, you have to think you're outside of the box when it comes to creating different types of scenarios. And so that limitation is...
It sounds like you're saying the limitations on more creativity. Really, you're able to get more out of less out of more.
Absolutely.
How's that go? You get less, you get more.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've shown us some cool tools, some sculpting, some texturing, and placing the props and doodads. How does a zone, how do you start making a zone?
I'll start off with a little demo zone. And a demo zone, basically what that is it's a proof of concept for a zone before we go hook, line, and sinker into the entire thing. So basically, for example, here, what I did is I put the buildings in, but I started kind of illustrating and kind of showing how the trees are going to be used. And we're very aware of geography. And so for these lower level trees that are near the ocean and at a lower altitude, I was thinking they would be perennial trees with leaves and stuff like that. And then
So you're letting nature determine how things function, right?
Absolutely. We have a very fantastical world, but it needs to be relatable to a certain degree. And so there is a variety of levels of that in different zones, obviously, because it's a fantasy world.
Well, I don't think people realize the work that goes into doing this all by hand, but making it look natural, right?
Yeah,
People
absolutely.
won't accept it if it doesn't look right. If they notice the background, we probably made a mistake, I think.
Yeah, sometimes even with some of our less natural zones, there's a certain level of it's grounded to a certain degree, and it's definitely important that we have an awareness on how that stuff works, erosion and weather and things like that, tide.
You mentioned something about the roads and the mountains. Does the story dictate how those things are coming together?
Absolutely. So first off, that's a great question. First off, one of the things that I want to kind of clarify is there are two different stories here that I'm going to be working on. One is the geographic story, like what is this landscape all about? How does it work? How has the weather affected this place? Is this an old volcanic plug that was eroded away a long time ago? But there's also the human element here, and as I get into the roads and stuff like that, I kind of wanted to find that little story. So this isn't going to be, this trail here isn't going to be this massive street. It's going to be kind of a road that was recently made by these settlers who are getting resources for the Alliance. And the roads help really define the story. They kind of bridge the gap between...
You mean guide the player. They're helping to really guide where you're kind of controlling through nature and through mountains and obstacles how people should see the zone, how they experience the zone, right?
Yes, absolutely. It's all about composition, and there's all these little subtleties that you have to deal with, and you have to figure out as you're doing this stuff. And roads, everything from it being kind of a small path to a big highway, we have, over the years, kind of given a visual language to our players as to where it's safe to travel, where it's not safe to travel, where you can walk and where you can't walk.
Those sound like they're like rules for making a zone, right?
Yeah.
Have those
rule set
progressed and changed over the years? And everybody sort of follows this process, right?
Yeah, I think
to some degree. Right?
to a certain degree. I think everybody who uses this tool, thankfully, does it slightly differently. So, whether you're an old pro like me that's been working on this game for a long time, or someone who's really new, I'm learning from everybody. And Battle.net forums even, some of the best ideas I've gotten into vanilla, especially, were the people that were involved in our forums speaking up about what they thought.
We tell a lot of different stories, don't we?
Yes, absolutely.
And so you can see the transitioning from this kind of very rural, kind of Alliance, small outpost on this island, and then if we come across and we look at what Eli is working on here, we have a much taller, larger, more imposing structure. You can see here. So Eli, why don't you tell us a bit about what it is that you're working on here?
Yeah, so I'm working on basically what's a magical academy for elven children, specifically Kelderai children. And this one focused on training these elven youth in the magical arts so that they can take on eventually their place in the Moon Guard. And you guys have probably recently experienced the Moon Guard in Suramar. And it's really interesting because this cultural reference for the Kelderai is unique into and of itself, but it's also part of a larger cultural sort of stable. So if I played this culture against the Blackbrook part of their culture, for example, the Blackbrook are much more of a militaristic, strong arm of the Elven culture and society, whereas the Moonguard are really the elite force. They're like the SWAT members, right? They're the magical elite troops that would send in for the worst possible situations, the most important missions. And so this would be like an academy that they're sending their youth to at a young age to train up in the magical arts.
So even the factions within a single culture in our world could inform the kind of style that you're doing when you're building the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for this one in particular, I really want to focus on this kind of magical island castle sort of feel to really evoke that sense of majesty and elegance that you see with a lot of the Kel'Drai culture, but specifically with the Moonguard and that tie to Arcane Academy, you know.
So what are some of the kinds of iconography and buildings that you see that you pull from when you're starting an area like this?
Oh, iconography of buildings, interesting one. So it's really interesting. I think it's very evident just looking across Legion even with the amount of Elven buildings that we did do, but we did traditional ancient Night Elven buildings, and then you see these other variations on Elven culture, right? Moonguard, Blackbrook, and with each iteration of it, it's really an evolution of the architecture even. So here we get these really like elegant, nice swooping forms. We get this, much subtler color palette. We get the greens and the nice coppers and all these things. And it's very starkly different than what you see with Blackbrook, where it is really presented in this kind of stark, militaristic, stronghold, fortress kind of feel. And it's very evident just by the way that the buildings were put together and the art direction on those, what those different parts of the culture are trying to represent for the larger Elven race. So I think it's really interesting though.
So what are the kind of challenges that come with building? Obviously this area has a lot more architecture. There's a bit more of an architectural style to working on something on this scale. What are the challenges compared to like the area that Matt's working on over there that you face as a level designer?
So with an area this big, this is actually an area of interest. So it will encompass multiple points of interest or multiple little areas that you're going to adventure through. And each one of these individual areas might have, one or two quests in it, making up a larger sort of bigger adventure space. And one of the key things that we're doing always is trying to guide the player through the space in a fairly natural way so that they don't feel like they're on rails. You don't feel like, hey, I can only go that way, right? We want to give you some agency, some ability to control your own exploration of this space, but I also want to give you really strong hints as to where you should go. So even on approach, I'm suspecting the player might come in from a boat, right? Might come in this way on a boat. So right away, I want to make sure that I have these very strong, iconic forms that stand out in all the silhouettes, so that you know, hey, I might be landing down here, but eventually I want to get up to this tower up here.
So that's why you shouldn't like go and get a drink on a flight path.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's the auto run, right? Will really kill that experience, because we do try to give you these sort of subtle notes as you're playing through the game as to where you should be going, where you should be looking, what the possibilities for exploration are.
So once you've blocked out this larger space and you've kind of got an idea of how everything's coming together, what's the next stage for you as a level designer when it comes to building out this space?
For me, so my basic process, and I kind of talk you through this is another way we work, is we'll start with something that's effectively a bunch of pieces of geometry that were created for another spot. And I've come in here and reassembled them in very rough form, just to get some detail in and get some bigger form. I'll start cutting in these really generic plateau spaces, start doing some rough placement of my buildings just to see how those are going to fit in the space, start to carve in some paths, like this one I've carved in along the backside of the mountain here. And really just start to work out the navigation, the play space, how the player was going to flow across that area. Here you kind of see all of it without the buildings in it. So kind of all the same spaces. And then I'll start going in and really tuning the geometry for the terrain. So this is where I've taken the copy-paste, and I'm actually going in and starting to tune up all of this geo and really sculpt out all the rocks so that I get a consistent geology language across the entire space.
So you're literally here, you can go in and you can, whether it's editing individual vertices or
yeah.
doing large swathes. You work on both levels to try and make the play space come to life.
Absolutely. I mean, try to work efficiently, right? So I'm going to try to make like kind of big choices at first, working with big bulks, but I'm literally going to come in here when I'm doing actual sculpting on this terrain and move each vert individually, because I'm kind of a little bit of a perfectionist, right?
A little bit? So, and it's important to stress here, when we're seeing these demonstrations, you'll notice we're kind of jumping to versions, kind of like the cooking show. Here's what I made earlier. The process that you're seeing on stage today is probably several months worth of work. It's not just a couple of days. Getting these areas to the level of quality that you guys demand, that is worthy of Azeroth, kind of takes time to come together, and we'll do a lot of iteration. And we'll do a lot of gameplay practicing and kind of working out the flows and kind of running around it at ground level and seeing where is this area navigable, can we easily get up here, do we need to look at these slopes, are the players falling off anywhere? So Eli, can you speak a little to like how the player behavior kind of influences your design as you get towards the end of this process where you're like finishing the blockouts?
Yeah, I can absolutely. And even, so it goes above and beyond just player behavior, right? It's even like, how do you feel when you're running through this space? How does the quest information guide you through the space? Where are the quests telling you to go? And a lot of time when we initially plan out a space and we put the quests in and start playing through it, you realize that, oh, the quest is actually telling me to go someplace I don't really have a clear path to. And that can cause a lot of redesign, which we're happy to do. We're always trying to make these spaces very playable, very easy to navigate. But there's the other side of it too, right? Like we're talking about the auto run or the flight path. For example, if I was auto running and let's say I had a path that was coming right up to this edge, I'd probably want to put some sort of fences or railing or something here so that you don't just run right off the cliff, because then you have to, come all the way back over here, come up a path, get up back into this space. So I do want to think about that as a designer too, that I'm designing spaces that, while navigable and explorable freely, I'm not really like setting the player up to fall off of cliffs, basically.
Are you ever tempted?
Definitely. So I have to admit, I was the guy who made sure that we kept the laser eyes in Stormheim in there for the Egmor's Vault. So if you walk in without being attuned to the band, you're destroyed instantly. I thought it was very funny.
And that speaks to one very important factor of how we do level design, is that the level designers are equal parts artist, designer, and storyteller. They work very closely with the quest designers in kind of how to tell the story of these areas. The gameplay is one thing and the cultures that come into them, but without the stories that we want to tell, these are the guys that kind of tell the visual stories. Eli talked a little bit at the beginning about what this area is. It's a school for kind of orphaned elves who are taken into this culture to be trained as the most elite magical warriors of their culture. And so how do those stories influence you as you work through your areas?
Oh, so much. So the whole time I'm working on a space, I'm actually telling myself these stories. And I play a lot of tabletop games too, like really, really huge GM tabletop games. So like, I'm literally telling myself stories before a quest designer will ever get in here and touch this. I'm making up stories about who's lived here, what's happened in the past here, what potentially is going to happen like right when you're in here. And really like, thinking about the history that's formed this place, it really does help to make the spaces that we're creating more believable and allows you as a player to get in and like actually feel like, hey, this could be a real place. And if we don't do that, it's so obvious because it's just, you can't identify with the people that live there, like when we're creating, villages and stuff, having a farm in there, having, the blacksmith or the inn or the wagon that's out in the field with the shovel next to it and the one pumpkin, it's those little stories that we tell that make it believable and make it humane, or human, so that we can really understand it and get in the space and believe it. Because ultimately that's what these games are all about, right? It's transporting you into a different place. And a history, a rich history and a depth of the space and the culture and the people that have lived there and what's happened there is really important to make that transportive.
Like it's almost as important what's kind of off the beaten path and players discover. We don't just think about the main line where the players are navigating through the central quest line. but the level designers are the team that are always putting in those little moments that, 9 months later someone posts about on Reddit and goes, oh my god, I found this cool thing, you guys gotta go there. And these are the guys that are coming up with those moments. They're kind of crafting these small spaces alongside these the important spaces that are driving the quest forward. They're also creating these little vignettes, these little stories, these little places where you get to make a sense of discovery. But you think about it, in a game the size of World of Warcraft, with the numbers of players that navigate Azeroth, it's quite cool that there could be things that players find months or even years later and then think it's cool enough to mention to their friends. That's all kind of the effort of building this world and making it a believable place and not just this collection of kind of quest locations that you've got to go and kill the big boss. We really want to kind of make it sell that
You want to make it a world, right?
Yeah.
You want to make it a world, not just a gameplay space.
So what are kind of some of the stories that from the Calderai that kind of made you gravitate towards this location?
I love the elven culture, really. I think specifically Telenor was a really interesting one. When we first started working on it, was really thinking about it just in it's going to be really cool. It's a city up in these chasms with all these waterfalls and everything. And the more I get into it, the more I start to think of the elves as this sort of very lofty and elevated race even. And it started to make more sense that they would set themselves up in these mountains. And okay, what is it actually though? And then starting to think about it's this sort of graveyard that sits up in these mountains above the rest of their culture, and the name being sort of sky and earth, which is really interesting. So I was really thinking about what would they do in that space to create a place that they would lay their ancestors down, lay their most important relatives and heroes. How would they present that? And they would find a beautiful place that was kind of mystical and spiritually uplifting. And I know I felt like that when I'm up in the mountains. I was just recently up in the rainforest in Washington and just felt transported to a different world, that magical feeling of being out in nature, being surrounded by just beautiful country. And I kind of was really inspired by that and felt like, for the elves, that's exactly what they would do. They would seek these beautiful outdoor spaces to surround themselves with, not only in life but in death. And I think, for Telenor, that was a really big influence for me, and part of the story I was telling myself when I was initially doing layout for it. And then when the level designer Victor Cordes finished it off, he definitely took that all into account and really knocked it out of the park. I think, because I think it does really feel like this beautiful mountain location that I know I would be happy to be buried there personally.
So again, it's like the nature inspiration.
Yeah,
merging with
absolutely.
the fantasy to kind of become Azeroth.
Absolutely.
Cool. So on the other screen, we're seeing Matt getting into some more of the smaller details.
Matt, I completely forgot. I forgot about you. Hey, let's check in to see what Matt has been doing.
Well, in just a matter of 15 minutes, I finished the entire map all by myself.
Well, Matt, why does it take so long for an expansion to come out?
There's a lot of
That's
iteration.
amazing.
Yeah, thank you. There's a lot of iteration that goes into these things. We are held accountable to the environment artists that give us the building blocks for us to do our work. We are held accountable by the dungeon artists who build these buildings and make the caves. There's a lot of people who pour their heart and soul into what we do, and so we are bringing all their work into the game, and so
Yeah, this is almost a dozen people would have
at least.
needed to make all of this. Right?
Yeah, and I'm thinking of even there's a lot of people, and so to me, everybody has a say-so on what we do, and we want people to come in and not just pat us on the back and tell us, oh, what a wonderful little flower bed you made. We want them to beat us up just as much as we know we're going to get beaten up by our fans out there in the Battle.net world. We'd like to solve the biggest problems before we even bother presenting it to our teams or to our fans. So there's a lot of iteration. That's the biggest reason why this takes a long time.
Okay, so I saw you working on a bunch of little details.
Oh,
and
yeah.
stuff. Can you tell us the process of wrapping up a zone? How does a zone become complete?
Last, because as we do iterate on things, those little details end up becoming very costly if you do them prematurely. And so as I finish up a zone, I started putting down the fence posts and the lamps, really kind of adding fidelity to the Murloc camps and stuff like that. Just
Why a Murloc camp?
bro.
Just, oh, you're wearing the...
Yeah, I'm a Murloc man. It's just the way it goes. But I'm a big fan of Murlocs. Again, this is kind of a traditional map. But even then, going to the stories that you're talking about and what Craig was talking about with Eli, just really thinking about the system here, which is the logs going into the lumber mill, getting chopped up, and getting turned into the lumber that they end up sending off into boats to be picked up to be sent to the Alliance. And
So it's all stories, everything, every placement of the little props, little doodads, and the path and everything.
every step of the way is a story that we're trying to tell, even if it isn't necessarily tied to a quest. It's something that as we ask players to journey through this world, that they're rewarded for it, not punished for it. So it's something that we take very seriously. And there's a lot of work, like Craig and Eli were talking about. We'll put little camps way up high in the mountains for those people who love to explore.
Oh, wait, so like Easter eggs and stuff,
Yeah.
do you do a lot of that?
Oh, absolutely.
Secrets?
Can
Can we have some secrets?
Yeah, I try to keep some secrets.
From Legion?
Yeah,
No?
there are some secrets that are still secrets.
To discover?
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
guess? Okay,
Yeah.
because you're not gonna, all right.
Yeah. So that's the biggest step. Beyond that, we do kind of polish passes with our point light system, which is a lot of fun. So
What are point lights?
So point lights are the little pieces of the light bulbs that are attached to lanterns and campfires on the outside. And so this really gives us a chance to use color that is relative to the zone.
And you can change the colors and yeah, there you go.
Yep.
And the
then
intensity.
Intensity, you could add flicker and all these different types of personality points to
Okay,
them.
what part does lighting play? And when does it become a factor with the story and with the zone?
It's well, lighting is in as far as the environment
Like
goes.
near the end, or sometimes you do, like, what do you like to do?
Oh well, I like doing these things the most because I like to go back into the game at nighttime and see what it does and how it adds the flavor to things.
So there's not just point lights happening here, these little pieces that are adding light. There's also the environment light that we're doing
yes,
with all the fog
absolutely.
and the zone. The lighting that you see here, I believe, is from Elwyn.
Yep.
But we can really do almost anything with the lighting. It's a whole nother factor that we're not even going into. That all comes back to story
Yeah. Yeah.
and mood and the emotion we're trying to get out of these, right?
Totally. The biggest fun experiences I think you and I had on classic World of Warcraft was going across the bridge from Elwyn to Duskwood, and that was when we discovered a lot there.
Matt was actually one of the very first exterior level designers we hired.
Woo!
Doing this ever since.
Long time. Yes, true.
I am so psyched to see the editor working here. This is something we've always wanted to do,
Yeah. So
and I can't believe it works.
yeah, we'll go and see this stuff again.
You got it like a finished thing?
We have kind of a little finished game we're thinking.
I didn't know.
Yeah. Let me get the sequel.
So we're going to run around in the section that you made.
Yes, sir. We're going to log in. And Sarah Boulian did a great job. She's now, she wasn't level.
Well, wait, look at that.
Look at this.
It's all, so spawning, where, is that another program they used to do that, or is that, what, is this all in there?
It's all in WoW Edit. WoW Edit basically enables quest designers, encounter designers, environment artists, all of us.
That looks
we all
awesome.
work through WoW Edit. And so Sarah was able to spawn this for us. And she added little lumbermen and sheep and kids running around. And one of the things that, kind of like going back to the main rows and composition and stuff, as you're going through, hypothetically, if you got a quest from here, we want you to be able to see this trail that goes up, and you see where perhaps you're supposed to go. And then,
Have you ever done a zone to this level and then decided, for whatever reason, doesn't work?
oh, that's
that happen?
happened a couple
I
of
think
times.
that's happened.
Yeah, absolutely.
A couple times?
Oh, at least once or twice. Yeah, we've got to be.
Well, not with you, right?
Sometimes it depends on how much I've been drinking.
You said drink. Okay.
Me.
Yeah.
So here's basically going with the storyline behind this was as the lumberman encroached so far into the forest that he riled up these murlocs who are now mad at these aligned settlers, and instead of stealing this junk that washes up on the shore, they're starting to steal their new supplies. And so basically what your quest would be to either belittle or befriend the murlocs on this island.
This looks awesome.
So-
Wait, but
Oh yeah,
could you look to the right just a little bit?
yeah.
What's that?
That's
You put your lighthouse
I
in there.
put the West Paul Lighthouse in there. I did, yes, I did.
What's the story with that?
Well, the lighthouse.
That's your lighthouse, man.
That was the first thing I ever made for World of Warcraft when I was learning.
Why did you put it in the demo?
Because Bill Petrus, who's now the art director on Overwatch, told me, because he's our art director on Vanilla, that he's all mad that it won't go into the game. It's just be prepared that it won't go into the game, and somehow it made it into the game, and it's one of my prouder moments actually. So here's
Wait, you also did the Barons, right?
Trying to
You're the one who did the Barons
trying to
that
get-
everyone should know.
trying to get me killed. Here, sorry.
I like the Barons.
Makes a great t-shirt. So this is the importance of composition. Like what I was hoping to do is, as you're going through these trails, you can look up, you can see the mountains on one side, or the ocean on the right side. As you journey up this way, there are places that you can go, but even as you head down this road, you see the little story there.
Doesn't it look different in the game than we saw it in the editor? Do you guys feel like you have a different view of the game now that you've seen it from scratch to this level, which is completed?
So one of the things that they might not completely realize is these detailed doodads that are also made by the environment artists. They
All the
are,
grass.
all the flowers in the grass that wiggle when you run through them, those are assigned to the textures and stuff like that too. So we don't place those manually. That would be another reason it would take so long.
That is the only thing that's procedural, that's done by computer. Everything else is done by hand, everything is placed, and it's all story-driven and nature-driven. Right? Gorgeous. Excellent job, man. Thank you very much. That was awesome.
So while these guys keep tweaking and poking their areas, we thought we'd like to open it up to you, the audience, to kind of ask some questions of these guys. If you have any questions about level design, we shall try and answer them. Gary's going to go off exploring into the audience with his mic. And
All right, some guys right in front here. What's your name and where are you from?
My name's Arash, and I'm from Los Angeles.
That's a long way.
I know.
So
You mentioned that you have to give some performance considerations to the work that you're doing. Could you go into a little more detail about that? I mean, do you get down to the level of merging meshes, breaking things up, or occlusion and stuff? Or just tell us more about that process.
That's a good question.
Yeah, so we have to think about pathing, we have to think about performance, things like fill rate, things like draw calls, all those technical things we are absolutely accountable just as much as we are to the artists that provide us these building blocks. We're just as accountable to engineers because we're trying to make their work shine as well. So performance is a big deal for us. We want to make them happy that they're working with us too. So yeah, all kinds of collision walls, especially for like PvP maps and things like that, we'll make sure that we make the collisions as airtight as we can.
That was a good question because sometimes performance dictates how things look. We may just do too much and we have to like make it look good a different way. You had a question.
Yes.
Where are you from and what's your name? Sorry.
Daniel from Georgia. We're talking about cooperation. How and when do the various other disciplines get involved? Like when in building your little island with the quest designers come in, when would everyone else give their say?
We try to get everybody involved in the very beginning. We'll typically have like a big kickoff meeting for everybody circling around. We're just geeking out, just like what's that show, Stranger Things? When they're in that basement, we're all just geeking out, throwing things at the wall to see what sticks. Quest designers and counter designers, producers, obviously the art director, design director, local designers, dungeon designers. Everybody that's involved in this whole effort is absolutely, even if it's after kickoff meeting, if they're just walking by us one of our desks and they say, hey, I have a good idea, why don't you put this Pandarian brew hub here? Oh, well, let's try it out. So we try and give everybody a sense of ownership as we do this.
Yeah, and collaboration is even within level design, right? Like I might start something, another level designer might take it to completion, it might change, 100% by the time they're done with it. But we definitely have that like level of collaboration and iteration across the whole team. Even as art is coming in, right, it's going to start affecting what the level design is doing, and also the art is affected by the level design. A lot of the assets that we get are created from necessity, by what we're doing with level design.
And sometimes it cuts both ways, because blank pages are often very hard to start with and put in. So sometimes the work that the level designers have done inspire the quest designer. They might see a POI, a place of interest that one of the level design team have built and go, oh man, I know exactly the story I have to fill that. And then sometimes the quest designer might go, I've got a cool idea for a story, tell it to the level designer, and then the level designer can go, and I see it, I know what that area will be, and we can build it. So it kind of works in both ways, and we don't try and bog ourselves down with like, this is our process, and we must follow it precisely, or we will not work. We're very collaborative, and we kind of trust our designers to be making smart choices and to be working with each other and kind of making the most of all of the ideas that come from anywhere. Whether it's from the game director down, to any of the team, to the forums, to any member of the Blizzard family.
That was a great question. I'm sorry, Matt. We were going to move on. Is that okay?
No, yeah, I just agree with them.
Absolutely. That was a great question. We could talk all day about that. I want to get some questions. You had a question. What's your name?
Katie. I live 15 minutes down the street, so I'm local. Yeah. I was wondering, do you guys experience creative block? How do you guys get past that?
No, we never do. We're always creative. We're never not creative.
Yeah, we absolutely do. I don't know, for me, I work through it, honestly. Like, I just keep my head down and keep working, and I think changing from like a status as a student or as like somebody, when I was working just drawing at home or something like that, but it's changing from being sort of an individual to being part of a larger team and a process. Like, you draw inspiration from people around you, you look for that motivation to keep going, because you know that just watching everybody around you, right, it does give you momentum, and a lot of the time, if I just keep working through a block like that, I might be doing really terrible stuff that I'm not going to keep, but just continuing the process going, it'll actually sort of refresh my palette and get all the bad ideas out that are kind of blocking my creative process, and so I eventually will work towards some new and I guess innovative approaches to whatever problem I'm facing.
I agree with that. I sometimes get this feedback from my peers, and sometimes if they're just walking past and I'm looking at something and it just doesn't feel right, and creativity just goes in these waves. Sometimes you're having a great day, sometimes you're just dry, and that's the time when it's a great opportunity to get help from your peers. And a lot of every single person in my department that I've had the privilege of working with has always been there for me. I'm learning from some of the newest employees that we have. It never stops. And so I think, in a way, that block that you feel, I think of it more as an opportunity to engage with your peers and kind of see what they think.
Well, thanks, Matt. It's not a 9-to-5 job. You can't just turn creativity on when you need it. Okay, what's your name?
Hi, I'm Jerome. I come from Greece. Could you guys talk a little bit about the challenges you face in releasing those tools to the public, to modders, to machine map people? And just as a quick follow-up question, is that a 154 slot backpack you had in game?
That doesn't exist.
We're supposed to see that.
No, actually, the item thing that we had was our doodad menu. So every single doodad that you see here is in that menu. And we can create favorite lists and stuff like that to help streamline our process for searching for the exact thing that we want to get, especially when you're dealing with a whole lot of different cultures in like a hub, for example. You want to make sure you don't put a Tauren basket in a Night Elf, supply pile or something like that. What was the other question?
So our tool actually does everything. So it's not, the logistics of releasing it to the public would be mind-blowing. Because this isn't just our level design tool. All of our quest design goes into this. All of the items that go in the game go through this. All of the assets. So it's just the way that the tool's been built up over the years that it would probably, our tools lead is here somewhere, he would probably have a hernia if we even suggested that this tool might ever get in the hands of the public, because the complexity that goes into making, I can hear it laughing, so that's usually a good sign. So yeah, the complexity in that would just, it would blow our minds. So it's probably beyond anything that we will ever see.
All right, let's move on.
Hi, I'm Veer from Israel. Is there any QA process to these maps? Like how often you find that you missed the light on a campfire or out of the bath?
Oh man, QA, absolutely. We have an embedded QA team now for World of Warcraft, and they are absolutely the backbone for providing you guys with a quality product. They catch so many things that are just human error, and as we try to speed up and make deadlines because we've had to iterate or whatever, we'll have like a floating tree or something that you're supposed to be able to run up that you can't run up or something like that, and they have absolutely been the angels on our shoulders for that. So I love QA. I came from QA back on Diablo 2. I have a profound amount of respect for them, and they are always involved, absolutely.
Yeah, our QA teams are awesome, and a good number of our design team come up through the ranks, having worked up in QA, join our development family as well. So they are an awesome resource, and they know the game so well and do so much work that often goes underappreciated that our world would not exist without them.
Cool, thanks you guys. Next question.
My question is, with Warlords of Draenor, the instances seem to be a lot more outdoors, like Everbloom, things like that. They were easy to overcome terrain challenges with certain things like swap blasters. With the Demon Hunters coming into Legion, it seems like the instances are way more linear, there's less space to move around. Is that intentional because of the double jump?
Not that I know of. I'm not smart enough to figure all that stuff out. I might create landscapes.
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, if you ask the guys who made the Demon Hunters, just said we wanted Demon Hunters to be cool, and they were okay with it breaking small parts of the game that we could fix, and if there's anything egregious, we deal with it. We didn't want to kind of subdue Demon Hunters, so we definitely didn't try and dial down any of the design just because we were adding this new class.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, it wasn't really a clear and present issue when we were designing. It wasn't something we tried to design around, I guess. You know, the happy accidents that make Demon Hunters feel so awesome sometimes are the things that they can do that other classes can't. You know, that makes them really cool.
Absolutely, thank you, Eli.
Hi, I'm Robert from Huntsville, Alabama, and I know a big part of the world of Azeroth is about caves and interior levels. I know this is the exterior level design, but I was wondering about the challenges in the process of integrating like caves and catacombs and crypts into the maps that you have. And I've noticed like over the expansions we've gotten more and more unique and more zone fitted caves. Can you talk a little about that?
Sure. Well, in the beginning, it was really just a matter of manpower and time. You know, the fidelity of those caves and these pieces of architecture, their work is more and more incredible. So it's a matter of really trying to find the amount of time to get all the caves that we want. In the beginning, we had one gold mine, and we had used it 5 times in 2 zones. That's what it was. Now it's always, if we can have a really cool entryway that really fits into Stormheim or fits into High Mountain or Valsharoth, we definitely want to do that and have the interior reflect some kind of a continuous, cohesive story for the geographic story that we want to tell. And so we're always trying to push the fidelity, both in the exterior level design and absolutely, and you can see in their work, they're trying to push the fidelity in the variety of theirs.
Do you guys know early on when we were trying to make caves, we actually used the Quake 3 editor. We thought we were going to use that to make interiors. That did not work out. That was early on where we did not know what we were doing.
And our first cave had rebar in it. It was some design idea.
First, I want to thank you guys for showing us your engine. It's really cool to get a sneak peek into how it works. My question is, how does your engine handle nav mesh?
Automatically. How's that? Yeah. It's something that we don't really have to deal with, but it's also something we can control. So this view here, you can see all the red triangles here. These are all basically non-pathable, and there's effectively a tolerance. So if I were to start pulling some of these verts down, you can actually see this updating. So now these are becoming pathable as the red shading goes away on them. So while I have some control over it, it's really just a programmatic tolerance.
Very smart people figured it out.
Yeah.
And just to add on top of that, that's another thing that we try to keep doing, is showing for players where those pieces are pathable and where they're not pathable through just without having to slip and slide and get frustrated. We're getting better at creating the landscapes that we want and providing intuitive overlays so that the navigability is much more clear from a visual standpoint as well.
That's actually a good point. So something we try to do as level designers is to very clearly call out pathable surfaces by texture. We don't always do it 100% of the time, but typically we're going to try to make sure that, for example, on a pathable surface, it's a grass or a paver stone or gravel or dirt or something like that. And try not to use a rock where you should be walking. Just so it's kind of a subtle visual cue as to what should be pathable and what shouldn't. We don't always do it. It's kind of like not a hard, fast rule, but definitely something we try to consider.
Cool, thanks Eli. One quick note that's pretty cool, when we actually make the game, we have two monitors, the editor on one side and the game on the other. So we can see whatever we do in the editor happens instantly in the game. It's pretty cool. Hey, you have a question?
Hi, I'm Zach from Arizona. When do you guys determine enough is enough? Because you guys are working this whole time as we're doing this presentation, and if it were me, I would just non-stop. It doesn't look right. I just need to tweak this.
I hear you. The game is never done. It's never done.
That is the critical function of producers. They are the arrangers of our timeline, and they keep us on a schedule. They keep us aware of the big picture on things. It's really hard, it's a discipline. Like I look at everything that I've done so far, and I still find flaws in things. And you just have to pick your battles, and just you want to get an expansion out. You want to uphold that quality. People sneak in a few hours of overtime to feel real strongly about something, but that doesn't go away. You just have to kind of learn to work through it, knowing that it's, if there is the clock ticking.
Good question.
Hi, I'm Scotty from California, and what does it take to become a level designer? Like, do you get a strong art background or game design? Where did you guys come from?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Well, I would say that the biggest thing, just to be a developer, you need to have a good solid art background and design background, at least with what we do. But specifically with what we do, you definitely need to have a passion for making landscapes. I would say that a good 85% of our time-consuming work is consumed through making mountains. And thinking about erosion and thinking about just what geography does.
I think the most valuable skill set that I bring to the table is just a real love for landscape. Like really, really love making mountains and making really awesome mountains, and just get excited about building these world spaces. So.
Well, thanks, Eli. I can speak to that real quick. I'm basically new to the extra level team, and you know what I did? What I've been doing most of this time? Rocks. Like for weeks. Someone had a question over here. Did you have? You did. Time for one more. Last one.
I'm Jim. I'm from Honolulu. So Matt says that one of his proudest moments is his lighthouse to get out this fall. I mean, I've heard that story 100 times. But yes. So Eli, what's one of your most proudest parts that you've put into the game? What's your bread and butter?
It might be surprising, but actually Sir Mark, I think, is the thing I'm most proud of. I think it was a real feat. There were so many people involved in making that happen too, and I'm super proud of the work everybody did on it. I just think it's beautiful, it's big, it's fantastic, it's everything I would want from a World of Warcraft environment. It really a fantasy environment. It's transportive. I just love it. So that's really my like highlight, I think, of everything that I've worked on.
Cool. So in wrapping up, I want to say something. This team is one of the most amazing groups that I personally get to work with on the team, and we have an amazingly talented team across the board. Our level design group is also quite a large group. There are a whole lot of designers that go into building the world, and I've been looking out in the crowd as we've been doing this, and I see a lot of them here. So can you guys please stand up? Come on guys, don't be shy.
Matt Sanders, you're my hero!
These are the people that make this world possible. Cool, do we have time for one more? Where's Jenna? One more? Okay, we have one more question.
I got to you.
Tim from Austin, Texas. As your tooling has advanced and gotten developed over the years, what has been your favorite newer features that have come up that you've been able to use?
Oh man,
Great question.
That is a good question. There have been so many cool tools. I want to mention a few just because they are so equally awesome. The vertex mapping, us being able to kind of add color values on top of the existing textures. They're really, if you look at the earlier zones, we had like this kind of rainy looking technique. We tried to break up the landscapes in a very big level, but we didn't have the ability to do it. The vert mapping and the bigger brushes and stuff like that, it's really allowed us to kind of expand just on big cliff sides and on the big open valleys and things like that. So there's the vert mapping. And the larger textures, we now have textures that cover a larger piece of real estate than we ever had before. So we give these really big shapes and we just paint out the detail where we don't want it, and allows us to kind of get a really cool new look to the game, even though it's still in that art style. And then the point lights, actually being able to light up the ground and have those lanterns reflect on the ground, it makes the nighttime seem so much more magical than it did before. What about you, Eli?
I think vert color was a pretty awesome tool. I don't know, like I'm pretty simple though compared to some of you guys. Like I don't like customize my brushes. I pretty much use just the default functionality of the editor. So like, yeah, like the artistic stuff, I think vert color was a pretty huge one. It allows us to do so much more with the shapes to really accentuate the contrast value and things to really call out those shapes from each other. I mean, just look at the difference in this side of the mountain with and without vert color. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing, and it's just really all it is it's tinting the textures that are already there. Traditionally, we would have done this similar thing. We would have taken two textures. We'd have to do a dirt, and then we'd have to blend over the top of it with a rock. But here it's just one solid rock texture, and I'm going in and just basically painting value on top of it. So it gives you all the contrast and form.
Same thing with this one over here. It's kind of the same thing. It looks very flat, but it just adds that stuff in there, and you can start thinking about like waterfalls creating kind of a greenish value because of the moss that could be growing on, and it's just a very empowering tool.
Cool. Well, thank you all very much for coming, and we hope you enjoyed the speakers. Signing stuff over here. If you want to get the autograph of these lovely gentlemen behind the white curtain over here, there will be signings happening.